right, and welcome everybody to another segment of our Career Corner for Auburn High School Career Tech. We've got Amy Hanna, our career coach. I'm Audrey Marshall here. I'm work-based learning coordinator, and we have a special treat here with us today, and that is Chef Bancroft. He is the executive chef, owner, operator of Acre and Bow Arrow, and he is going to tell us a little bit about himself in just a minute. We also have with us today Daniel Chesser, our PR coordinator for the school system. We have Julie Echols, our food nutrition wellness teacher in her classroom. And we also have Chef Jon Everson's classroom, Culinary 1. And we are so pleased today to have Chef Bancroft here with us to talk to us about careers in culinary and his adventure as a chef. So without any further delay, we're going to ask Chef Bancroft to take it on away.
War Eagle, everybody.
War Eagle.
So I guess my career is a fun one and a fun story, as I had never planned to be a chef. I went to Auburn University to study finance and accounting, and I just, A, I love to eat, and B, I like being first in line. And so when you're the chef, you get to control all those things. But I always enjoyed cooking for other people, and it was a passion of mine all the way through college. And I had eventually asked my father if I could go to culinary school, and he kind of laughed because I was in my senior year of college and said that's not what we had planned, but that's what the Lord had planned for me. So I didn't go to culinary school, and all of mine was self-taught in the kitchen. And 2 restaurants later, here we are. I noticed you had a bunch of questions. I didn't know if you wanted me to start just going through these, or if you were going to ask them Q&A.
Yes, if you would just kind of talk to us about your journey. I know you told us a little bit about how that wasn't the path that maybe your parents were seeing for you and so forth. But would love to know about your adventures in culinary. Why did you decide culinary? What was so interesting about that? How did you start your restaurant? They've got tons of questions, but I can fire some off, and Mrs. Hannah and I usually tag team and fire some things off, but we just wanted to hear about your story.
I think the most important part is to kind of figure out how I got passionate or gained passion in the culinary industry. And, my mother's parents were farmers in South Alabama. And my grandpa Kennedy was a cattle farmer, cotton, pines, peanuts, catfish, tilapia. He eventually built his own restaurant because he couldn't sell groceries fast enough. So he built his own restaurant to help sell more products. Then he got tired of not getting loans as a farmer, so he built his own bank and became a full-out entrepreneur. That was a big impression on my childhood, riding around and feeding the cattle and looking at the chicken houses and then watching him serve all of that in his restaurant. That was farm to table. Before the term farm to table was invented, Grandpa already lived that life. So my dad got a job in San Antonio, Texas. We moved from Alabama to San Antonio, and now I'm just submerged in this cowboy and vaquero culture where you've got cowboys, like American cowboys and Mexican cowboys. But when they all got over the same campfire, everything was the same. And everybody enjoyed telling stories and fellowship and just the history of Texas cuisine. So now I've got this Mexican influence, Texas influence. I grew up fishing the Gulf Coast. So catching my own fish and filleting fish and getting it right onto the grill, or throwing a trawl net out and catching fresh shrimp. As I became a hunter and outdoorsman, it was important for me to learn the anatomy and the breakdown of anything that I was going to harvest. If I was going to hunt or if I was going to fish, then I wanted to make sure that I had full respect and honor into whatever it was I was harvesting. So all of that combined to this crazy explosion of a kid that just loves to eat anything and experience culture anywhere. So anytime I would go on a trip, I was always so just, submerged in a culinary scene of wherever we were visiting or traveling or vacation or at a friend's house. Um, Especially if I would stay at a friend's house who his family was from Mexico, or and totally learn new flavors and new profiles. All of it, and just the science and the culinary science of it to me was so invigorating that about 12 or 13, I started dabbling on the grill and grilling hamburgers. And then all of a sudden I started grilling ribs. At about 14, 15, I started throwing briskets on and cooking all day, low and slow Texas style brisket. I remember I would throw a brisket on, go play a baseball game, come back, stoke the fire, go back and play a doubleheader, then come back home and eat the briskets when I was finished. Then I got into college, and I got to Auburn University. I joined a fraternity, and they quickly voted me the kitchen steward. And they're like, this guy just can't not touch whatever we're doing. He's got to fry the catfish. He's got to boil the crawfish. He's got to smoke the Boston butts. So they voted me the kitchen steward, and I remember asking my dad and my mother also, sophomore year, can I just go to culinary school? And I was heavily involved on Auburn's campus in SGA, Freshman Forum, and a lot of things that were kind of already developed. And they were like, well, you can't leave now. Let's just chat, keep on, going through college, and let's figure it out. And senior year, the same feeling just hit me again. Like I can do this. I understand. I can watch Bobby Flay cook something on TV, and I've just got it. Like the science for me just clicked. I could already taste it. I could already break it down, and I really wanted to pursue it. So I got a job at Amsterdam Cafe in Auburn, Alabama, and that was my first kitchen job ever, senior year of college. And about a little bit over a year into it, both the chef and the sous chef left, and the owners just kind of looked over and said, what about that kid? He seems passionate. And so they gave me my first chef job. And in all honesty, it normally doesn't happen that way. You go to culinary school, or you really, really do the grinding version where you get in kitchens and grind it out and gain your position. I don't know how mine landed in my lap, but as soon as I got the chef position, it definitely wasn't easy. It took a lot of work, a lot of 80 to 90-hour weeks, a lot of late night hours, and a lot of sacrifice, to be honest with you.
Well, I don't want to monopolize the questions. I'll see if Mrs. Hannah has any questions too, and if the students have any too. If y'all have any, we'll just kind of chime in. Y'all just let us know and so forth. But very, very interesting. What would be some advice you would give to our students now, as far as if they're interested in a career? We have two excellent programs here: our food nutrition wellness program, also our culinary programs. Both they're teaching some things. In fact, Mrs. Echols wanted you to kind of show them some things with those knives, and I'm so glad that you're over there and not here, because I just told the students that those knives things are just kind of crazy for me. But she wanted you to kind of tell them a little bit about that, but I also wanted to just what would be some advice that you would give to them if they're embarking on a career in culinary?
Yeah, I think the one reason that I love being in culinary arts was, if you look back to Grandpa Kennedy and his wife, Mama Jean had that long farm table. And there would be days, she always had Wednesday lunch when cousins I didn't know were cousins would come over. Mm-hmm. There were second cousins, third cousins, their cousin, her cousin. They weren't a cousin. They just called them cousin. But the ability for her to serve selflessly and to serve the family and want to nurture them. And the same that goes into every day for me in the restaurant industry is I don't do it for Instagram, and I don't do it for the public. I do it because that's how I serve and that's how I witness. And the most important thing for me, I think, in this industry is, you have to want to exist in that fashion. You have to want to serve people, nurture them, nurture their health, nurture what's going on in their life, and you can do that through food. To me, it's a great place to serve and a great place to benefit those around you.
Chef Bancroft, do you have any culinary certifications?
I mean, I have to be ServSafe certified, and that's something that we have to go through. That's basically in tandem with our health department, and you have to go take, the health or the ServSafe requires that you go through HAZAP control, and you understand about critical point control and handling food safety, food temperatures, cross contamination. Those are the biggest certifications that I have. Like I said, everything else that I did was Auburn University. It was business school, and so I went to school for finance and accounting. I am a chef, and I am in the food industry, and I was cooking literally before I came onto the computer. I also am an entrepreneur. I'm a businessman, and I have a lot of employees that I take care of. So a lot of my certifications are that I'm nice and treat my employees properly.
Hey, Chef. I'm Miss Echols, Julie Echols. Sorry, got my camera blocked. I'm actually at home in quarantine. But I'm sure the Culinary 1 students have already taken ServSafe, but the students in my classroom are going to be taking the manager test in a few months. And just to kind of help them understand that importance, if they came to you or to someone else with that certification, the manager, not the food handler, do you think that would help get their foot in the door in a business like yours?
Absolutely. Just because I didn't have to go to culinary school doesn't mean that I didn't learn other certifications about being a business owner or handling the staff and the team. That's my utmost importance. And so qualifications or past work history is obviously important. Credentials are important. But mostly I work with people and I care about people. And so much of the interview process that when I host one is looking at the mannerisms of someone and how they respond, and you can just tell a lot by someone's nature how they're going to interact in the kitchen, or if a hustling and bustling environment with a lot of stress and long hours is going to be the right place. Now, ultimately, when getting in the door, at some point you're green, and you're going to be green. It's going to be your very first kitchen job, your very first position in this industry. And I had my very first day. And, my very first day, they threw me in the back with the prep cooks and it was with 4 women that only spoke Spanish. And so it was definitely a learning curve, but it was my first day and I wanted to impress. So I worked very hard for those women and until I finally earned their approval after about probably a month. But going through and finding any sort of certification you can or qualification can only better your odds and better your opportunities. But make sure you understand why you're getting them. Don't check the box. Make sure. So many times I've hired someone with a great culinary repertoire, degree, and background and references, and then they cannot perform in the kitchen. It is really something that this industry it's hands-on. You can study as much as you want, but you have to get your hands dirty. You have to be a part of it. You have to understand why the kitchen runs to manage a kitchen. So obviously I would recommend anybody going in the food industry to at least work in the kitchen a little bit. One of the things I did before I became a sous chef, eventually chef, was I left the kitchen and I went and served tables for a little bit. Just so I could know, just so I could be on the floor and hear all of the interaction going with the customers and the guests. So I would encourage as many certifications as you can get, work as many positions as you can if you're going to manage those positions.
Chef Bancroft, I think you're hitting all around what I'm about to ask, but will you talk a little bit about the power of relationships I mean, it sounds like at Amsterdam, because you had a positive relationship, you were put into a position to be successful that set you up for what you have going on today. But and being somebody that went to school for something else and ended up in this industry, could you talk a little bit about the power of relationships and how they benefited you on your journey?
If you go back to those of y'all in the faculty that have remember the Auburn food scene 2000 to 2005, and that was when I got here was 2000. So, there wasn't a lot of creativity. There was a lot of football focused, college crowd focused cuisine. And there wasn't the farm to table scene. There wasn't as much diversity in our food and culture as you see in Auburn now. And so when I wanted to represent that part of the beginning of the launch of that in this area, there were no relationships. There were no farmer relationships with the agricultural community. And there wasn't a lot of the locals that trusted somebody that wanted to cook to that caliber or wanted to provide a little bit more expensive plate because it had 3 different local families' names that represented the food on the plate. The Hornsbys, the Randalls, the Chapels, you name it. If you buy a little bit more expensive groceries, everything's going to get more expensive. And so it wasn't the best time going from 2005, 2008, when we had a slight recession in 08, when nobody wanted to spend that much. But really, when I focused on the relationships that I could build in town and nurturing people, when I said go back and serve people, was not be in the back as a chef and pompous and with my toque and bark at my staff and tell the customers, I don't want to go to the dining room. The food speaks for itself. No, I got in there and I danced and did every dance move everybody asked me to do. And I got to know the community by serving them at the table. And when I got to know them and their families and their children, and the community opened itself up to me. And Auburn and Opelika created my career. Gaining those relationships and learning not just how to play to the crowd, but exist and participate as a community member and get involved in the chamber and get involved in local philanthropy only enhanced everything that I had to offer. And it fortified my position as a chef in the town that the locals wanted to support and they wanted to nurture what I was doing and they wanted to bring their friends and this is where we eat when we come into town. We go to Amsterdam Cafe. And this is where we're going to, now when you come back into town, let me show you where he's at next. Now we're going to go over here. And then now look, he's going to build Acre. And, I love the fact that this town, because of those relationships and actually contributing to them and actually participating, is what opened up the career for me. It wasn't Instagram. It wasn't social media. I fought the heck out of Instagram because I was so good at Facebook. And that's where I put my pictures. I didn't want to go to Instagram. I'm still not on Twitter, and I don't care. I'm not going to TikTok my food. But what it is the fact that there is an actual story behind my food. And if you get to see me in person and you get to eat with me, it's a much better experience than just a plate of food and a menu item. So, yeah, relationships is a massive part of success in this industry.
What do you think is the most challenging part? There's so many different facets to what you do. There's the business side. I think about things like inventory, and inventory in the restaurant business, will spoil or go bad or won't be fresh if you don't order, the right amounts. But, then you've got, like you say, the relationships. You've got employees that, can be difficult at times. And that's never a fun thing, to have to deal with. Or certainly unhappy customers, hopefully you don't have those, but, everybody's going to experience these things. But what do you think is the biggest challenge in what you do?
I think the biggest challenge in most of the restaurant industry, and obviously there's so many other facets of the culinary industry, and different avenues. I'm just, hyper specific to the restaurant industry because it's such a public entity and a public platform and a public way to serve. I think the most difficult part is to keep your staff motivated and understand why it is you're doing what you're doing, and remind them, like, you applied here, and you applied to a place that wants to serve people a different way than you probably are used to. Or if your last job that you were at treated people this way or treated the staff this way, that's the very first culture shock they're going to have when they get there. I had one employee the other day at Bow and Arrow said, "Chef, why is everybody here so nice?" I'm like, well, I mean, the number one thing is that we love what we do. And if you can truly start that culture all the way from the top, and it's beneficial for my teams at my restaurants because I am the chef and I am the owner. So the number one voice you get is quality control, nurturing guests, because it's the chef speaking. There's a lot of situations where restaurants don't succeed because an owner doesn't have the same values. They're a business person that doesn't understand food or food quality, and are never going to communicate with an artist the way an artist wants to be treated. I'm very fortunate that I'm an artist and I went to school for business. My mother was the science teacher and building volcanoes and exploding stuff, and I loved it. You do that with food too. And my dad was a retired CFO, or he was a CFO, chief financial officer, so supreme accountant. Having the ability to control that environment at my restaurants is crucial because it builds the culture within my team that they know from day one that I care about food so much, I'm going to make sure you care about it. I care about the quality. I care about how you handle it. I care about your success. I care about your future growth. I care about your financial success with us. I want to make sure you have opportunity. I want to make sure you have leadership opportunity. I want to make sure you have opportunity for growth to get into management. Very few times have I actually hired a manager outside of our building. Always, just because of the French style kitchen brigade is what you would call it, where your executive chef or chef de cuisine and sous chefs and so forth, and the same style of management up in the front, that it just creates a pyramid of people climbing and getting the next raise in the next position. And I love hiring from within. At Bow and Arrow recently, we had two managers that just left, and both for different job opportunities. One was in Las Vegas and Reno, and that was working for Tesla, so not in the food industry anymore, but pass that one up. But we had an opportunity where we needed two managers, and all of a sudden we hired from within, and those two managers are absolutely excelling. So one of the difficulties is literally getting the team to understand and to invest. And if you really believe it, and if you really preach it, and you really show it, and you do treat them right, oftentimes in this industry, you're going to see people respond. And I love, and obviously there is difficulty with guests, but so many more times when our staff enjoys what they do, our guests, they feel that, and they buy it in and drink the Kool-Aid just the same. And so it really just starts from the top of management, the top of the totem pole, and make sure that my managers are treated right, so that they will treat their people right, and so that team will treat the customers right, the guests right, our purveyors, people that are coming and dropping off groceries. I don't tolerate anything from top to bottom. And that's the biggest challenge in this industry right now, is the lack of people that really want to invest and work that hard and serve people with that much intention.
I know this is a cliche question to ask a chef, but what is your favorite dish to prepare? And it may be something you serve in your restaurant, it may be something you cook exclusively at home, but what's something you truly enjoy each time that you make it?
Does it have to be fancy?
It could be a hot dog.
Oh man, I am a roast beef, rice, and gravy kind of dude. Like good, slow Sunday pot roast, white rice, gravy over the top, green beans. hmm It can be cheap butter. I don't even care if it's margarine. I mean, I got obviously the nutritional science here, but you know what I'm saying. Over, old school cloverleaf rolls. That's just it's nostalgic to me. Um, I love, because I'm an outdoorsman and fisherman, I love redfish on the half shell. I love catching redfish. I was a deckhand. That was one of my experiences. I forgot to mention when I was in college, I was a deckhand in New Orleans. And so I would leave the fraternity house and drive all the way down, park, get on a little four-seater plane, like Indiana Jones style, shaking with the skis on it. And they would land me out in the ocean and the Chandelier Islands and drop me off on this barge that had a house built on top of it, and it would hold 30 guests. And every day they would catch redfish, trout, grouper, whatever, flounder. We go gigging for flounder, but if we caught redfish, we did redfish on the half shell. And that was basically leave the scales on and then cook them over charcoal and then just slather them in butter. And that was, I mean, if it wasn't pot roast, it'd probably be redfish on the half shell.
Speaking of seafood, what are some limitations that you experience locally? Even though Auburn is a great location, kind of 2 hours from everything, but kind of build upon Amy's question about shelf life of things. What are some challenges in that realm as far as fresh produce, fresh seafood, all those things that are not quite so much locally sourced, but things you do prepare and serve?
I mean, the biggest kicker in that is we are 3 hours landlocked. We're not on the coast. So anything's going to have 2 days travel to Atlanta or to Birmingham to get there. I wish it was faster. Sometimes I can get it morning of if I fight for it or call it way out in advance. But the biggest distributors are in Birmingham and Atlanta. There's no other version to get it closer. My favorite purveyor is Evans Meats in Birmingham. They're just locally owned. I know the fathers, I know the sons, I knew the grandfather, just 3 generations of Evans. And in all honesty, the seafood there that's getting to them is the same into Frank Stitt's restaurant or Chris Hastings or Rob McDaniel or Adam Evans. They get it just a few hours before I do because they send a truck and drive it here. So it's really not that displaced or that much travel into it. And it is by far the best quality I can get.
Can you describe a little bit about how it has been in your restaurants since COVID has hit?
Well, that's a doozy.
Sorry.
No, that's good. Obviously, it was a massive challenge. And as y'all know, restaurants are still closing. If they weren't already closing at the highest rate of any business, model out there closure. I mean, restaurants are known for the highest failure rate. To now throw mandatory shutdown on top of them. We were very fortunate to get the protection loans, paycheck protection loans, which definitely assisted. The style of Acre, which is what I consider the mothership of the 2 restaurants. I mean, that's the one. The way it's designed and sitting on the lot caused a problem for that restaurant. You couldn't easily get out in excess getting to-go groceries or no way for us to cook it over here and then walk it out 80 yards to your car and figure out that you were there. We didn't have walkie-talkies or we didn't have the sonic drive-up boards, and it struggled. Acre struggled the most in quarantine because we didn't have an easy logistical way to get groceries to you. Logistics is a massive part of the restaurant industry. when laying out your restaurant, you want it to be efficient. This is like supply chain management. I mean, all the things that go into designing ebb and flow, designing first in, first out, whatever it may be. And now you're cooking and walking out the back kitchen door, out around the dumpster to get to a car in the parking lot. Made it extremely challenging. It wasn't efficient. Bow and arrow, I put in a pickup window, before, when we first opened the restaurant. And we had just never really pushed it because it was always fairly busy enough that we didn't really need to do a lot of drive-through pickup groceries. And all of a sudden, this is the only method we have. And immediately, my wife got on and designed all of the online digital portals to get that aim of business to us and get that revenue, Chow Now, whatever it may be. And as soon as she did, the drive-through line wrapped around the building, out the street, past Church of the Highlands, and some days it would go down to the pull-in of Auburn High. And like, how are we we're not Chick-fil-A. We don't have trillions of dollars invested in double lane lines, people walking through with the iPads in the crowd. We're just old bow and arrow. And we had to furlough 90% of the staff, and we're down to 7 people. So yeah, it was challenging, but there was so much support in that drive-through window that bow and arrow actually made a little bit of profit. And when it did, I was like, well, everybody knows that we were counter service, where you ordered at the counter. And ordering at the counter meaning you had interaction face-to-face with somebody. You ordered, then you slide down, and they would slide the tray down, and you would interact with 3 or 4 more people. It was not a safe model for post-quarantine. So since we made a little bit of profit, I immediately said, well, I'm going to spend all of it. So I took it and completely gutted the restaurant out, completely changed the logistics and how it operated and how the guest experienced walking in the door to a counter service. Now it is a full service dining. We had to hire 30 new employees to make that happen. So it wasn't like we changed the style. We changed the whole business model. Our labor model was now going to be through the roof to get, one server at your table without all the interaction. So the biggest challenge in that for bow and arrow was, is this gamble going to work? Like, what does post-quarantine look like? And when we did the full service menu, we were able to increase quality and increase the creativity, because now it's not the little buffet line where you just pick a few of the sides and the meats. Now you actually get to go through and order the full menu. We built a full service bar. We put in sound systems outside. We built a host and hostess stand up front. We had to shut off areas that originally existed. We had the tray return, like at a fast food place when you were finished and you put your tray up. We gutted that whole area and we put booth seating in there. So we actually gained a little bit of space, stretched out some, basically almost 2.5 times our staff. And you're talking about doing that when all the college students left, because there was no college. There was no school in session. So we were hiring fish in a dried up pond. It was tough, but to be totally transparent, it is far outseating, or outperforming what it was pre-quarantine. I think people just enjoy it. They're ordering a lot more diversity in their food. They're ordering for their friends, their family. The drive-through window is still humming. The food quality and all of the offerings and creativity is now into the expanded menu with the enchiladas, fajitas, all the things I grew up with from Texas. There's so much more of my personality in the food. I've been able to take 3 different staff members and turn them into managerial positions that we didn't have previously. So because we did all of that gambling, the whole staff benefited. People are now, like, we're creating managerial positions and building around the staff that we have because of the success of the gamble.
That's fantastic.
Go ahead, Amy.
Go ahead, Daniel.
No, I was just going to say for anybody, any of the students that are listening that are interested in following the same path as you, being 16, 17, 18 years old right now, and they want to work for Bow and Arrow or Acre, tell them a little bit about that process. If it varies or differs from something else, or if you've got something unique. I mean, does it come in and ask for an application? I just thought maybe you would explain that process a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, we hire, I think the youngest that we've hired is 15 with parental consent. And there's positions that are very easy just to tiptoe into the door at both restaurants. Acre is definitely full service. I mean, Wine Spectator Awards, 4 James Beard nominations. The level of cuisine is normally 3 to 4 courses minimum per table. Polishing glasses all day long, polishing silverware all day long. I mean, holding glasses up and looking at them in the light. Very flamboyant and just over the top service. But there's always a space to get in. And at Bow and Arrow, it's definitely a more Texas style environment, a little bit more upbeat. This Saturday, we're having live music with Ben Sutton and a crawfish boil. And, you know, it's going to be just a totally different environment. But at both restaurants, we've had a lot of Auburn students and also Lee Scott students that, and Opelika that will start in at 15, 16, polishing glasses, bussing tables. And some of them now are top servers on the floor making $200 to $300 in tips a night. And that's not, that's accurate. And so really, I mean, getting in, and as I said, we're the type of restaurant that just loves promoting from within, that there's going to be opportunity, whether it be in the front or the back or serving up front at the host or hostess stand. There's definitely opportunity at both. And like I said, every single person has to start somewhere. You have to be green and you have to get in to get started.
You also do catering too. I know some of our work-based learning students were on your catering crew, so that was another opportunity for them too.
Yeah, and just to plug I'm so proud of 2 of my students. So Grissom Schultz works for you at Acre, and then Davis Toulier are both former students of ours, and I think the world of them. And every time I see them, they are always so grateful and appreciative of what you've done. So I just, on their behalf, tell them to say thank you. But then also for my kiddos, we're starting our knife skills unit. Any suggestions for them as they get started on learning how to properly dice and chop and all of that good stuff?
Just so you know, Davis was one of those that just got promoted to sous chef.
Nice.
And he had worked at Chick-fil-A previously.
Right.
From Chick-fil-A to my sous chef. And Grissom his story started with his brother Hanson, who worked for me before. His dad that chopped firewood for us. And then Grissom bussed for a long time, polished glasses, and then he became a server, became our best server, and then last month was promoted to assistant general manager.
Was he really? That is wonderful.
When I say promoted from within, you produce 2 good ones.
Well, they did it. They're amazing kids. I'm so happy to hear that.
And so you talk about knife skills. What are you interested in?
Well, so of course I'm home at quarantine, so they have just watched a couple videos instead of me demoing anything, but they're gonna learn how to make some, matchstick French fries or bâtonnet French fries on Friday when I get back. And we are the nutrition side, so we don't go into as much detail on knife skills. We don't have as much time to do that, but they have to learn the basics in order to cook every Friday. So just the basics of, what are the tips? How do they hold the knife? How do they make sure they're not, damaging the knife or hurting themselves? And then I'm assuming for the Culinary 1 kids, a little refresher, because Chef Everson, I know, taught y'all those skills as well. But just what are the basics that everybody in the kitchen should know?
I think the ultimate basic to know is make sure to use the right tool for the right job. There's not a whole lot of times that you're going to use this dude. And this one, came from China. My friend Whitley that owns Irritable Bowel, he and his wife Desiree, her parents sent me this from Japan. And it's pretty intimidating. My wife's never going to use that. But it will definitely do the job. Now, when I say get the right tool for the right job, is you want to make sure that you select a knife that fits your style, your hands. Now, this is a basic chef knife. This is a 10-inch chef knife. And I have 8-inch chef knives too, so I don't always want to use a larger 10-inch. But what I would say, if it feels heavy to you, one of the very first things I did is I went and bought a Whopper massive chef knife with this huge cherry wood handle. And I almost got carpal tunnel syndrome. And it was just, my joint started hurting. It was so heavy trying to chop. So then I shrunk and shrunk until finally it started fitting my hands. And you can see I'm not even holding the handle. And so one of the things I would say is just make sure you find the right size knife for you first, something you're comfortable with. I can do anything with this knife. I can choke up to here, and I can score things. I can chop fast. Or I can really hold it tight and carve, or put it into something and pull down and carve into meat, and it's sturdy enough that I can use it almost as a stiff boning knife. But so many times I see a lot of my cooks, especially in training, I teach them don't hold the knife way back here, hold it up here with this one finger trick, because you don't get a lot of control on the knife. So I always choke up. They put this little heel right here. See that little indentation? Because your fingers fit there. See that? And so I always choke up on a knife. And when I'm chopping right here. So make sure that you get the right tool for the job first. And then make sure your knife is comfortable. If your knife is big and you're trying to chop and mince parsley with this thing, I would say in Japan, that's the style. That's how they would do it. In China, but that's not typical. And that's dangerous. That's dangerous.
Thank you. And they watched a video yesterday about that, about how to grip the knife correctly. So that's perfect. Thank you so much.
So what are the questions? Any other questions about knives or tools? Nada.
They are so quiet. I'm just like, gosh. Oh, we've got one question in the back here. What is that question?
You mentioned something about having to sacrifice lots of things on your way of going to restaurants. What were some of those things?
I heard something about chopping things.
Oh, he said you mentioned you had to sacrifice a lot of things on your journey to being a chef. What were some of those things that you had to sacrifice?
Well, I mentioned that I was in a fraternity at Auburn, and I was involved, and I hate that as a lot of my friends were going off to finish architecture or go to grad school, and I was working long hours, and I got to a point where selfishly I was basically told myself, as they were all running off and getting married or having graduation parties, that if I wasn't in your wedding, I probably wasn't going to go. And I hate that I did that. I hate that I was that selfish. There was a couple family holidays and family things that I elected not to go to because I was an essential employee in the kitchen. And they would land on days where Auburn was playing LSU and we were both undefeated. Whatever it may be, or Iron Bowl. Like, don't apply for a job in the culinary industry in Auburn, Alabama, and then request the Iron Bowl off. That's not how that works.
I need you to say that over and over again for my work-based learning students, because that is home, prom, things like that. That is a very big thing that y'all have to think about too. Your
I think
schedule in the restaurant
the,
industry is so busy.
one of the biggest things I've learned in this career is where a lot of those decisions I made skipping out on stuff was selfish, and I wish I hadn't done it. And at this point, I look back and it wasn't necessary. But what was necessary was commitment and investing into what I wanted, into my goals. And you can't do that if you think you're going to have a massive, social life and then go have the ultimate demanding culinary career. But if you do invest properly, invest in your team properly, there are so many other rewards that are available and so many other rewards that will present themselves.
Tell us a little bit about the significance of your outfit, because I know when you're photographed or seen in the kitchen or out in, whether you're on TV, what have you, you have what, I guess you'd classify as a uniform, but tell us some of the features of it and the significance of it.
I've got two different styles of outfit that I wear. Both just are basic, I guess, I don't want to say my character, but my identity as a chef. And that's either going to be in a crisp, white, clean chef coat, much like this one here. The one I'm wearing today was a gift from the Auburn University Hotel when they host the hospitality gala. It's because my Acre coat I ripped this morning. But the other items I wear are plaid shirts, kind of southern looking. If I'm going to be smoking something or butchering something or at an outdoors event or cooking over fire, and that's just because that's true cuisine to me. It's not. I don't have to fake that food when I'm cooking over a bonfire or cooking over a barbecue pit with the Rodney Scotts of the world or the Fox brothers or the Jim and Nicks of the world. I've got a little bit different look than the Iron Chef America Kitchen Stadium version I've got going on. But honestly, the food is the same. I'm going to treat the quality and the approach to the food identical. I'm going to make sure it's accurate, make sure it's fresh, make sure it's good, make sure it's nurturing to whoever it's coming from or going to, and make sure I know where the food came from.
Would it be safe to say that you do things your way? I mean, for example, you've got the ball cap versus the typical chef hat and things of that nature. I mean, has that benefited you along the way to be unique?
There was a certain point earlier on in my career where I wore white chef coats and wore nice black slacks, like executive looking, with nice non-slip, almost dress shoes, but they were non-slip, and looked like a kitchen advertisement. And I realized that that's not, like, I never felt natural like that. I felt like I was wearing pajamas in public. And as my food became much more, I guess farm to table, this was 06, 07, when I started going to local farms and buying live animals from a farmer or blueberries or whatever it was. My first introduction to getting local lamb probably isn't the one I can tell here. When I had to take the lamb myself, I didn't go get it in a package or get it from the processor. That was a different experience. Even as a hunter, I was not prepared for that. But ultimately, when you're talking about the quality of food and talking about your appearance, and you definitely kind of want to match your part, but you also want to be unique to yourself. I don't ask my staff to come in and look like me or dress like me. I provide opportunity in our restaurants for them to exist in exactly how they want to exist. You'll see cowboy boots next to Doc Martens, next to, whatever. I mean, it's it's not a style that my staff has to emulate. But as I began to become, more involved in the farming and agricultural community, a white starched press, chef coat was pretty hot and sticky out in the middle of Beauregard, getting plugged by mosquitoes. So I started dressing comfortable. I was a baseball player, so I always loved wearing ball caps. And this one was a gift from Kendall Jackson, which is one of the biggest wineries and wine producers in the world. And Kendall Jackson in Napa Valley. I know they have some pretty basic wines, but they do have a very upscale portfolio as well. But they invited me all the way out to Napa to be a guest chef, toured me around the vineyards, and I cooked for all of their guests right there in the middle of the grapes. It was a pretty awesome experience. So this is a hat with a purpose.
Chef Bancroft, thank you so much for just for taking your time today. You've got a great story. Through career technical education, we certainly hope that all of our students are able to find a passion like you have and understand the work ethic that it takes to make that successful. If you had to leave everybody with, I'll put you on the spot, maybe, 3 to 5 words that describe the work ethic that you really have to have, what would you say that is?
Yeah, I kind of harped on those words the whole way through. Yeah, it's a little bit on the spot to have all of them in a line, but I would definitely say commitment to what you're doing. 100%, I would say investment. And so many ways I defined investing into the culinary industry. That is into your community, into your team, your staff, into your customers, into the food, into the care, into your personal appearance, and be proud. Not prideful, but be proud. Be proud of the things that you're doing. Represent what you're doing. Enjoy it. Be passionate. There's so much monotony and stagnancy that comes from a restaurant that just won't change and just won't adapt and won't admit something wasn't working. So be passionate and force it the other direction. I was in a situation in quarantine that I had no option. Was literally stay on the boat and go sink or jump off when the shore is right there. Over there, you can do whatever you want. You just got to swim and you got to go. The whole staff, all of my managers voted with me like, I know we feel safe on this boat, but it's going down. So let's go. And with their passion in that team, all of them investing together, being prideful together about what we were going to accomplish, and being compassionate, and required all of their participation. Bow and Arrow is a new restaurant today, and I'm grateful for it.
Well, we certainly thank you, Chef Bancroft, for the time that you spent with us today and to share your experiences. We know that you're a creative, passionate person who is serving our community, our local community, with flair and something different. And like I said, you've hit everything on the spot as far as talking about bringing a new dining experience to Auburn. And we thank you for taking the time out of your very busy schedule, I'm sure, to spend this wonderful afternoon with our students. And on behalf of Auburn High School, we thank you and we hope that you have a good afternoon. And thank you all for joining us today.
Okay. Thank you all.
Thanks to you all. Next time I'll make sure they send food there before so you can eat my food while we're doing this.
Oh, that would be a good thing. Well, thank you again. And y'all have a good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for everything.